Hallo, og velkommen til Bryllupspodcasten. Dette er podcasten for deg som skal gifte deg og planlegge bryllup. Jeg heter Eirik Halvorsen og jobber som bryllupsfotograf, og i denne episoden skal du få treffe Liz og Topher. De bor i Phoenix i USA, og de hadde et bryllup som var ganske utenom det vanlige og veldig fylt av personlig preg. Og ting som vi diskuterer i denne episoden er: hvordan kan du gjøre bryllupet til ditt eget i alt mylderet av denne forventningen av hva et bryllup skal være, og ikke minst press fra familie og venner. Vi snakker om å ha taco til bryllupsmiddag, og hvordan du sparer penger på dekorasjoner ved å gjøre smarte løsninger selv, og hvem inviterer man og ikke når det er litt vanskelig familiedynamikk. Hvis du er av den visuelle typen, så finnes det videoversjon av denne podcasten. Der kan du også se bilder av det som vi snakker om i episoden. Det finner du på bryllupspodcasten.no. Der er det også beskrivelse fra hver episode, og du finner linker til ting som vi snakker om. Du finner også Bryllupspodcasten på Instagram og TikTok som @bryllupspodcasten. Så gå gjerne og følg, og si hei, send en melding, og jeg vil veldig gjerne høre ifra deg. Hello, and welcome to Liz and Topher. How are you guys?
Great, how are you?
I'm very great, thank you. It's been, it's actually your 4-year anniversary is coming up.
That's great.
How does it feel?
It went fast.
Yeah, it went so fast.
And you've become a family since, so tell me a little bit about that.
We've got little 2-year-old Hilo. He just turned 2 in November. He is crazy. He is a little towhead blondie like my wife, and let's see, he likes sports a lot, also like my wife.
And he also really likes garbage trucks.
He loves garbage trucks, yeah. And any other kind of truck, really.
Yeah.
He watched 45 minutes of a guy just driving tractors around yesterday with no narration, just a guy driving tractors around. So yeah.
And then we have baby number 2 due February 12th, 2023. So we're almost there.
That is so exciting. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, almost 4 years after your wedding, what's one thing that you remember the most or has the most fond memory of from your wedding day?
I think, so when people ask about our wedding day, you do come up. You absolutely come up. And there was one thing that you kept saying to us throughout the entire experience, because you were a part of the rehearsal dinner, you were a part of a lot more than just the wedding itself. And in the chaos that is the entire weekend with everyone in town and all these people you haven't seen and all these loved ones, you can get completely scooped up in it. But because you were driving the photography and you were driving, making sure we had those moments sort of encapsulated in time, you would say to us, just be together. That was what you kept saying, just be together, because you would pop in and we'd be excited to see you and you'd be taking photos, and you just kept saying, just be together. Or you'd sneak us away because you'd find us a little spot that was kind of unique and secluded, that was beautiful, to take a couple of extra photos at any point in the experience. And every time we found that spot, it was hard to detach from everything else, but you kept saying, just be together. And so when people ask about my favorite part of our wedding, I always say, we just got to be together. And it's not just together in the sense that like that was our wedding day, but it was in those tiny moments that you helped us to create that we didn't realize in the moment were so impactful to like the foundation of our relationship. So
wow.
Yeah, I think that the time that I remember the most clearly, and that really still sticks out for me today, is the time right after the ceremony ended, where we kind of whisked away. Yeah. We were taking photos, but like it was the perfect moment where we were newly married and we just spent very close time just kind of basking in that ceremony
I couldn't
together.
stop crying.
Yeah, right. And it was just, I think that was my most vivid memory of the whole experience, was that time right after the ceremony where we got like an hour to just go and be together.
Yeah.
And I think we were just like looking at each other and kissing each other and whatnot, and like, you were there.
And you were there. It was great. Yeah. Yeah. So creating those intimate moments, right?
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree on that specific moment. And I, as a photographer, I had to judge, like, is this too private? You know, because you were in your own bubble. And like you said, I wanted you to be together, but also to be yourselves. Right? And I remember Ray, the other photographer, he was working with the bridal party and riling them together, getting them ready to do some group photos. And I think he also photographed them individually as couples while I was just hanging out with you, because you were just sitting there and realizing, oh, we got married. We're married. We just got married. And it was so beautiful. And I just thought, I have to photograph this. You know, I have to take these photos.
In the moment, obviously we love and adore you, but we didn't even, like, you were just not even there. It was just like we were together, but it was also, you guided us to that secluded spot that was very private, and it allowed that space, the private spot that you found. And we've been back to that location, and we sit in that spot, and we have those moments there, and it's special whenever we go back there, because that was like our little, like, yes, we can go and see where we said I do, but that spot almost was more special. So yeah, that was a good one. Good answer.
Thank you.
Yes. and thank you. I feel very flattered to be such a big part of your wedding weekend experience. But aside from the photos or me as a photographer, like your wedding weekend in general, is there something that sticks out that you just loved, or that you think about, or that you cherish the most now, like almost 4 years after your wedding?
I think for me, so what we did was very different than a traditional wedding. Here in the States, it's more common to do it this way, but it definitely doesn't fall under traditional. We did a very, very small ceremony at the Desert Botanical Gardens. And then we did a massive party, like a huge, just anyone who wants to, we were like, oh, you want to come? Oh, you can come. And the intimacy of the ceremony and that being that special moment, but then being able to celebrate in a really big way, and just being honest with our friends who we didn't invite to the ceremony, saying we wanted that to be special time. That was probably one of my favorite parts of it, because we got the best of both worlds. We got the intimate family and friends for that very special moment where, you know, it was fantastic. But then we got the amazing party that we had so much fun at. And so not having to choose in that capacity was probably one of my favorite parts of how we did it.
Yeah. I think, and this goes beyond just the weekend even, but some of the lead up around, I'm going to say it as it is. We met Irma. Irma catered our wedding, and we love Irma very much.
Yeah.
We ended up going to Irma's kitchen probably 8, 9, 10 times through the course of us planning our wedding.
Tell him like what Irma's kitchen.
Irma's kitchen, like, it is classic regional Mexican food. It's like they do breakfast burritos. They do like that's the normal stuff.
It's where the construction workers go to lunch.
Yeah,
because it's that good.
Yeah, it's awesome,
really good.
And we just made such a connection with Irma too. And I think the through the course of planning our wedding, like going to Irma's kitchen and like talking to her and eating some breakfast burritos and planning a little bit more about like what kind of food it was going to be like. It's just so much. It was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I still look back on that and like the relationship that we built there too as something like really
special. Because we still go back. She's met our son. You know, we go back there a lot. But again, not traditional. That was a very inexpensive food option. But all of our guests at the reception said that was by far their favorite wedding food ever. And it was tacos.
Yeah, tacos and some other,
and like chips and, chips and salsa. And Irma's family were the people that set up the little buffet line. And she also sourced some of the decor for that area, like from Mexico. Like she brought just what she had. And it wasn't steak and lobster or steak or chicken or pasta or anything like that. It was delicious.
But that's what I think that's what I was most proud of with our wedding in general. Not just, proud and just very happy to be there was we just brought in the things we liked. At the end of the day, I don't think we made a whole lot of decisions which were like, well, this is the type of thing that you ought to do at a wedding. Yeah. There were like maybe a couple things, right? And everybody makes accommodations for a few people that are special in their life and whatnot. But for the most part, like okay, we're going to go to a crazy art gallery. We're going to, we're going to bring in tacos. And I felt like the whole thing just felt very authentic to us, which was, I think, it just gives good vibes thinking back to it, It's just happy feelings.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that's definitely one of the things that makes your wedding a very personalized experience. And I think there's a lot of aspects of your wedding weekend that made it this personal thing. So in your planning process, like when you started thinking about your own wedding, had you been guests at other weddings before? Like, had you experienced what you wanted and didn't want and kind of took, notes from there?
Yeah. So Topher and I, some of our friends call us Liz and Topher Fun at Weddings because we go and we just have fun. We are some of the first people on the dance floor. One wedding, a friend last minute, someone, they needed somebody to MC it. And she's like, can you MC our wedding? Can you take the mic and run everything? And I said, yeah, sure. And so I think at the core of who we are, no matter if we're attending a wedding, it's our own wedding, or it's a super close friend and we're in the wedding, we try to bring that energy because we know how special that was for us too. And before, I think we also just kind of look at it as, this is a party. Exactly. Let's party.
You're going to be here for a couple hours, 2, 3, 4 hours. You might as well go and party it up while you're there.
And have fun.
We like to dance.
Yeah, we do like to dance.
But I think that I hadn't been to nearly as many weddings as I think Liz had before we had ours. Like I'd only been to a couple, and
I've been in some.
Yeah, right. Been some. Yeah. I think I've never attended a wedding without you, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's true. So I hadn't been to that many. So maybe I just didn't have too many preconceptions about like, okay, what should it be? And like I had been to some which were very like, okay, we're going to a hotel ballroom. And the hotel is gonna cater the same food that they cater to the corporate events tomorrow, and like that kind of stuff.
After the church, after the church wedding.
So I've done that, had done that before, and then I did some more that were like more private, handcrafted things, and I think that it was always gonna just have to be something private and unique to us, right?
Yeah.
Like I think that's
and I'll take that a step further. Topher's also conducted 2 ceremonies since then.
True.
So he got ordained and has conducted 2 ceremonies now.
Yeah.
That's
exciting.
Fun fact. I don't know if you knew that.
I think I saw that because you guys are so good at posting on Instagram stories, and I love following you and see what you're up to because it's always something crazy with you guys.
Thanks. We try to keep it lively.
Yes. So when planning your own wedding, what was your premise? What did you want your wedding to be when you started planning it?
Want me to take this?
Sure, if you got an idea.
So at the start, you get engaged and it's so exciting. And there's your family's excited, your friends are excited, everyone's asking you 1,000 questions. And it was overwhelming. It was overwhelming because, you know, the questions feel intimidating. And so in the beginning, we were like, do we go international? Do we travel in the States somewhere? Do we do a destination? Do we go back to where I grew up in Minnesota? Do we go, you know, we didn't know what we really wanted to do. As we looked into it more and we kind of really talked about what was important to us, it was clear to just make it here would be easier because so many of our people are here. And also we live in Arizona in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. And so it's a destination spot in January for people to get out of the cold. And so people wanted to come here. So it made it really easy to sort of make that decision. Plus, once we looked at budgeting, the budget compared to missing out on having those loved ones with us, like our friends and family, it just was that was an easier decision. Plus, my sister at the time, she's Air Force for the US. And so she has super high security clearance. So the location list that she'd be allowed to go to was very minimal.
We couldn't go international. I remember that.
Yeah, she had a lot of rules. And I wasn't about to not have my sister there. So for us, it was kind of a combination of those things. And then once we decided it was here, it took some time. There was an evolution of the pressures of traditional. We toured a number of different locations, but once we sat back and really just the two of us, we had to cut out all the noise, which was really hard.
Yeah. So can I just interrupt a little bit? Did you feel a lot of pressure and expectations from friends and family about how to do things or do things in a certain way?
I think there was. So my mom is not a pushy person, but she definitely has expectations, and she will let you know what those are in a pretty gentle way, honestly. But you know, I also don't want to disappoint her too much.
Yeah.
So I think more than anybody, I think probably like those expectations were known, but I don't believe they were super onerous. I think that it ended up meaning that it crafted our invite list a little bit, but not a ton. We added some people that maybe we didn't have as super tight connection to ourselves, but it was meaningful for the broader family to have like those people together. So I think that was...
Yeah. And I think for me, less of the guest list and more of, you know, just the stuff. The stuff was started like, what dress are you going to wear? The dress has to match the location. And, you know, then, is the table going to be decorated the way that the location is and the dress is? And it finally got to a point where I think if anybody looks at our wedding, they'd be like, oh, it looks great. It looks wonderful. But if you're going to get really nitpicky, we just chose things we liked and we didn't care if it didn't like go together.
We didn't have a planner or like a cohesive designer for the wedding.
No.
So we ended up just taking the things that we like. And I think we have decent aesthetic sense, generally speaking. So we were kind of excited to do it. But like, it's definitely unique. We chose a space for our reception too, which like you can't really make cohesive because the space itself is not cohesive in a certain way, right? We went to an art gallery with lots of different artists and kind of layers upon layers of different art, like over time, you know. So, but what a bride would style for that space doesn't totally match where our ceremony was, which was in a garden, and we just said we don't care. Yeah, basically, we contain multitudes. Yes, we do. So yeah, it was fun. I think I seem to remember when I was thinking about what was important for our wedding and like what the theme or conception of how to put it all together, looked like that there were two important parts, which was where do we do the ceremony, and like how do we do a ceremony which feels incredibly like intimate and just personal to us, and then like what do we want that reception afterwards to look like. And I think from the beginning I really wanted to make sure that we had a space for all the people that we know and love, even if we hadn't been super connected to them for like a couple years or whatever, being an opportunity to bring all of those people from our life back together. And so I think we knew, or I knew anyway, that like we wanted a big space for that, so that we could have that option. I think from there we just started looking at options to determine like what would fit our needs.
I do remember, less for you because I think you're less of an emotional focused being, but for me there was an emotional journey of letting go of the expectations and knowing there's a chance I'm going to let some people down on what they think this should be. And it was hard for a little bit, or even what they think the guest list should look like, or what they think the food should look like, even down to those small details, which even the table settings. I know some people had bold opinions on table settings, and in the end, it took accountability to say, I'm okay with the fact that this isn't going to be what everyone else wants and needs. So that journey was hard. That was hard.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of couples that are getting married can feel, right? Can sense. You feel that kind of expectation or pressure from other people or other instances, correct?
Yeah.
One thing that I think is a really good tip is you chose the ceremony space and the reception space based on something that you liked, something that you felt emotionally connected to in some way. And that is something, like when we talk about flower arrangements and all making things look pretty, you don't have to do that if it looks pretty already, right?
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
that we definitely talked about it with the garden,
and then with our like table settings for the art gallery. The vases we actually found at thrift stores. It's like a old school, like simple, like single flower vase, but it's the same type of vase my great grandmother used to have in her house. Like she had a couple of them and I vividly remember them, but you see them all the time at like the thrift stores. So actually his mom helped us scour the area and all the stores to find those vases. So we used some of those, very inexpensive. I mean, they were like 50 cents a piece.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they were really inexpensive. Wow. And then we did little like name, like to know like who's at your table things. And instead of having something fancy or some calligraphy on paper or whatever, we actually also, while she was out at the thrift stores and while we were looking at the thrift stores, we found plastic toy animals and we painted them bright gold. And those were also very inexpensive. We spray painted them, your mom helped spray paint them.
Yeah.
And then we just put little slits in them for the name cards to go into that we printed off the computer. And your table was a specific animal. And so it was really, I thought it was really cute and fun and quirky and fit the gallery space. Yeah. But also even today, some of our friends, when they see the people that they sat with at our wedding, they're like, oh, it's Team Koala.
Yeah.
And like, so they call themselves that and they identify it as that. And then your mom helped us find just a sketch artist that she sourced on Etsy or something.
Yeah, or Fiverr or something.
Something like that. And we had like a framed picture of the animal on the table, and the frames we found at thrift stores and just upcycled those. And one of them, I know one of my friends took one of them because we gave it to them. We're like, yeah, you can take it. We don't need it anymore. And they have it in like their home office. It's still in there. They have it as a piece of art in their home office. So, the option to do super fancy tablescapes was really expensive and it didn't feel personal. And so we went that route with it because it made us happy.
Yeah. I think like in general, there's a lot of times that the money you spend on something has no bearing to like how connected you are to that thing, right? And like there were a lot of options in planning a wedding to make it like to hit some like ideal of what other people's weddings look like and like what looks very regal or fancy, right?
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, that like I didn't have any emotional connection to that.
Well,
stuff.
we kind of did because our florist, when we brought the idea of what we wanted it to look like to our florist, who worked out of her home, that was another we went with a small kind of local grandma. She was a grandma. I remember she told us about her whole family. When we showed her what we wanted for the tables, she told us, okay, I'll get the flowers, but we had little sprigs of greenery on each place setting. And she said, hold on a second. She got up, went outside her house and came back in, and she had cut just like a couple sprigs of things from her yard, like just from plants in her yard. And she goes, I could charge you hundreds of dollars for this. But honestly, if you want to go the day before and get a bunch of it and just snip it and save it, or even the morning of, and if you have time, you can go out into the desert and do this and get what you need. You don't.
Eric knows something about this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have photos of you collecting those. Yeah.
Yeah. So we told you that we had to do that because that's what we decided to do, because we were going to save a couple $100 or whatever it was. And we went out to this beautiful area and you suggested, hey, can I take pictures? And we're like, oh, we have to go out there anyway. Like, let's just get dressed up and you can take pictures of us cutting little sprigs that we gave to our family to put on all the table settings. And it ended up being incredibly memorable because you photographed that, and it wasn't just an errand we had to do, or, something like, oh, darn it, something else we have to do for the weekend. It became an experience. So those little sprigs were like extra special.
And the activity of doing it and collecting it became the special part. Like, I don't really remember how the sprigs looked on the table, but I definitely remember the event to go and
I remember how they smelled. And
they smelled great.
They smelled amazing. So now whenever it rains in the desert, that smell comes up and we think of our little sprig hunt.
I love that.
Yeah.
So part of my big thing is your wedding is much more than just a wedding. And that's what I try to capture when I photograph. I always want to photograph more than just like the 8 or 10 hours on the wedding day, because there's so many things that comes together, especially before, right? And I think it was on a Friday morning, correct?
That we went and collected those?
It was.
Yeah. Because we got up at like 6 in the morning to do an engagement shoot at sunrise, and then combine the engagement shoot with the sprig hunting.
And I was so stressed because you're like, oh, let's take photos. And I'm like, I don't have an outfit. I don't know what I'm going to wear. And the night before, I remember I was like so stressed. And you're like, just wear what you wore when I proposed. And so I wore the same outfit I wore the night you proposed, which then it turned into almost like an engagement shoot. But I also remember being a little nervous, and I don't even remember what we paid you. I don't know what the cost was, but I remember being like, well, we don't need him for that long. He doesn't have to do all that. Like, he doesn't have to be there that many days. And I felt I didn't understand the importance of what you just said, in that it's a full experience. Looking back, I am so eternally grateful that you were a part of the broader scope of the experience. And I would not trade it for the world to have you there, because you came Thursday night and you were there you left Sunday morning, right? And the wedding was Saturday.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So you came to everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful.
And just hopped off a plane and like came over to our house to hang out like right after. You probably were so tired.
But doing that gives me energy. That's what I really love to do. And meeting you guys and your friends on the Thursday evening, grab a random beer from your fridge and watching you play board games. laying on the floor, playing with your dog. Gunther von Dog.
Gunther von Dog.
Yeah. I mean, that's what brings me energy. And I think doing those things, like we talk together on Zoom or Skype beforehand a couple of times to get to know each other a little bit. But I also spend these times, like the Thursday evening and the entire Friday, to help you get to know me a little bit better as well, so that you are not that intimidated when I come with the camera, up in your face. So I think all of these things leading up to that moment after your ceremony helped me kind of be invisible when you guys were in your own bubble. Because if you just hired me to shoot your wedding and I showed up in the morning of your wedding and the ceremony was finished, and after the ceremony is probably one of the only times or the first times you're talking to me, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to push the camera up in your face and, it would feel awkward.
So you say be invisible, but honestly, like, I don't feel like you were invisible. I think you were better than invisible when you were with us.
Yeah.
Like, you were actually a huge positive force in us slowing down and taking time to be together. Like, I think without you, if it was just us after a ceremony, we probably would have talked for like 10 minutes, been like, okay, let's get back to it. People want to go talk to us. And like,
you were almost the director. Like, you directed our story.
You were our emotional coordinator.
Yeah.
Okay, that is my new tagline for sure.
Emotional coordinator. Well, and I think you, because everyone knows you're the photographer, right? And your role is to get photos. If you took us somewhere to be alone in private, that was okay. But if Topher and I would have stepped away at our wedding without the photographer kind of narrating that, it would not have been perceived as appropriate by our guests and family. So you really did create space for those special moments. And that's why I say, like, a emotional coordinator, director of our experience. Yeah, I would say that's much more than invisible. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'm very flattered.
Yeah.
So one thing, I photographed weddings and couples in, I think it's 8 different states in America by now. And in January, I'm going to South Carolina.
You'll let us know later.
You'll be here.
Yeah, one of the Carolinas. Anyway, so I've experienced a lot of American weddings and different aspects of American weddings. And with Ray, I've been shooting Indian weddings and Southeast Asian weddings. And there's so many different aspects of what you guys are doing over there than what's happening here in Norway. We have different traditions and different things that we care about and different things that we bring into the aspect of what a wedding should be. And there are a few things that I love about American weddings that I think Norwegians could be a little inspired by. So one of the things I especially love is the rehearsal dinner. Meeting up the day before the wedding, gather most of the guests, meet and greet and break the ice and have some bite to eat, and then the actual wedding day will become a much easier and much more hey, how are you type thing. It's nice to see you again instead of trying to meet and get to know each other on the actual wedding day. Like, that's one thing. And the other thing is, of course, it's a little bit weather related, because in Norway we have much harsher weather, especially here than in Phoenix. But outdoor ceremonies is also a very nice thing where things automatically seems to be a little bit more open and loose and not as stiff as, for instance, a church wedding. Mm-hmm. So you've never been to Norway and never been to a Norwegian wedding, but if you were to give some tips to bride or coming bride and grooms in Norway for planning their wedding and to make it more personalized and make it more about them, what is something that you would give advice to?
You go first.
Yeah, I have some ideas. I think it really has to start with evaluating what you love doing together. Because there's usually a way to bring that love into what your wedding will look like. So Liz and I love the botanical gardens. We love art. We love tacos. And like these things that are already special to you as a couple, I think like that's a really good place to start, right? I think, and I don't know if others feel, there can be a lot of pressure for doing things a certain way that people expect to be. But at the end of the day, I firmly believe you're the ones getting married. Anybody that thinks that you're doing it wrong they can just shut up and they're wrong. So start with like what you love doing together and build it out from there, because that can be expressed, I think, through a wedding day.
Well, and I think being proactive in those conversations with your family too, because I think also depending on the couple, certain financial things are supported by family members. And when someone is supporting you financially, you can immediately feel obligated to do it the way they want to. And I think out of the gate, a very important part of the process is to sit down with anyone who wants to support you and your partner financially, to let them know that if you're going to support us, this means you're also supporting the way we want to do things. And it can be a difficult conversation. And if you have to walk away from the financial help because it comes with strings attached, to be prepared to do that. And from there, being okay with having it be what you need as a couple, because when you look back on it, and when those people look back on it too, those family members that might have bold opinions, they're going to remember the love. They're going to remember the energy. They're going to remember the interactions with the people. They're not going to remember, even the spaces, like the spaces I think are more special for us. But I think for the family and friends, they're going to remember the love and the experience over the spaces and the things. And so I think that would be the first step. And then the second part would be slow down and don't be afraid of budget. Because I remember when we were considering what was important to us, the budget was a really, really big thing. And I was worried like the flowers wouldn't look right. The flowers are always going to look right. They're flowers. Like they're like, as long as they're not dead, you're going to be fine. And even if that's the case, you can go outside.
It's still fine.
Yeah, it's still a thing. So you have to just like trust that all of those things are going to work out. And you have to really hone in on what's important to you. Because look, if somebody is really passionate about exceptional food, then focus in on the food. Like make that your area where you really want it to be special. For us, the photography was something that was important to us because we do enjoy art. And I remember our biggest thing was we absolutely did not want to spend the money on a photographer where it was posed.
I'm going to say something somewhat mean. But I feel like so many of the photography options we had were just record keeping. Yeah. Like they are taking a record of the day. They're not like
the picture of the dress in the tree, or like
it wasn't.
Why is the dress in the tree?
It wasn't artistic expression. It wasn't artistic expression. It was record keeping, and I think that's where like when we were looking at that, we're like, we want something artistic. We want something that has its own life, right? We don't just want a record of the day.
Captures the emotion of the day.
So I think that was like on that piece. I will say, I think to the overall question of like what other things about that might be special about American weddings or not, I don't know. And I know it's a thing in India. As you mentioned, you did some Indian weddings. Like these are rich, multifaceted events. Like a wedding isn't just the ceremony and reception, even it's the days leading up. It's all of that. And I think for us, we planned that time. Like my bachelor party was 2 days before the ceremony, and I actually loved that because it allowed me to invite everybody to come and be part of like the people that I wanted to connect to be part of that, as like regardless of whether they were coming from across the country or something where it would maybe not be feasible for them to spend all that time. Kind of grouping all of this together and turning this weekend into like a rich experience with lots of different types of events. And like I got time to spend with those people from my past friendships that I really loved, and it was all in like service to this wedding as well. I think it was great.
I had a friend who said she sat me down. We went to lunch, and she sat me down and she goes, "Now, no, this is going to be the most important time for you, because this is when you have your family and your friends from both sides there just for you. And there should be no other event like that. Like there really isn't in your entire life, to have all the people that you as a couple love and care about there to celebrate you. It doesn't happen again. It's the most special day from that capacity. And so I think like honing in on that part of it versus all of the traditional requirements, I guess, and bookkeeping and the kind of stuff, honing in on what you would want that to look like. If someone said, hey, you get a special day just for you and your partner to be with all the people you love. If you didn't even mention the word wedding, how would you design that day?
Yes.
That would be what I would ask somebody out of the gate if they were engaged. Like, just forget the word wedding. And what would that day look like? Would that day be, a water gun fight? Would that be like frolicking in a garden somewhere? Would that be,
do that?
Yeah, do that. Do that. So yeah, that's a long-winded answer.
Yeah, but I love that. I mean, the whole last part here just put everything together. If you remove the word wedding, what would you do? Create this weekend experience with your best friends and family members that you love, and do something that is you. Don't do something that you think you have to do just because it's a wedding.
Yeah.
I remember this was also on the Friday morning before the rehearsal ceremony. You had a yoga sweat session. Right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I remember knowing that this is important for me to photograph, but I don't think that the guests, maybe not even Liz and Topher, will understand why I should be there and photograph this. And I felt a little bit awkward in between all these yoga poses, laying on the ground under people's legs, right?
Yeah.
But I think and I hope, like, after the fact, that it made sense, because I think photography can be very difficult, because when you point your camera in someone's face and say smile, they will smile, put on their camera smile, and they won't really look like themselves. They're not doing something, they're not having fun or enjoying themselves. And I think capturing someone doing something that is fun and being with their family and friends, it makes them look more authentic or look more real.
Yeah.
So again, if I was just there for just the wedding, I would get, the post pictures and the group photos and, maybe some fun photos from the dance floor. But by photographing the yoga session and the rehearsal ceremony and the rehearsal dinner and then the entire wedding day, I think that captured a lot more happy faces.
Yeah, the yoga. I think one of my favorite photos from the yoga Ray took of you in like someone's in a weird pose and you're like laying on the ground or something. It was just so funny. But that class was really special for me to teach and to capture those moments and be able to look back on that. I mean, I use those photos even today when I'm reminding my friends and family how much I love them, or if I tell them happy birthday, I'll like send one of those photos with a little sweet note or something, because they were fun. They were super fun, and it again captured the energy of what we would want that weekend to look like. So yeah, those are good photos.
That was a lot of fun.
That was really fun. Yeah.
So back to the doing things in a personal way and planning your wedding with spaces or venues that you are connected to or want to have, like ceremony and reception and so on. During that process for you, was there something that was difficult? Like, did you have any obstacles with, no, we don't do weddings here, or yeah, you can do that, but ABC, you know, there's some struggle around that?
I don't know if you knew this, but the art gallery, I won't go into detail, on that week before, because it's an art gallery, you don't get to choose what's there. It's a gallery. So whatever is on display at the gallery is on display at the gallery. That week, they had a very dark and controversial art installment go in, to a point where we actually had to go and visit with them and ask them to switch out the art because it was a little too much for a wedding. So that was like something that came up that we had to take care of, that I didn't, you didn't think of, but we look back now and it's like actually something we laugh about pretty hard. But in the moment, that was a little crazy. What can you think of?
I think in the early stages of planning, like when the options are pretty open as far as like where it's going to be, when it's going to be, and whatnot, there were certainly, I think, paths that we started to go down that we didn't pursue. Like, I think finding the ceremony venue was the only place I can actually remember like friction with you to start.
Yeah.
And I think we got to a place where we were both really happy with it.
Yeah.
But I can remember like trying to figure out where that ceremony was going to be was a bit of a challenge to start.
Well, and it, you look at the costs of some of these places, and you look at like the cost of a wedding designer and a wedding planner and a day of coordinator, and there's all these different things. And we actually relied on friends and family. We asked for help, and I think that made our friends and family more a part of the experience.
Mm-hmm.
But your mom helped drive a lot of that. She loves parties. So that was a benefit to us. His mom loves parties. So it was part of the process that was hard was the current model of how people do things is they purchase all of that. And in ours, we actually sourced that from family and friends, and we asked for help and asked for resources. And
do we have any major like panics from that? I don't.
We didn't. I don't know if they did. They might have, but they didn't tell us about it. But it's almost like it came together with so much love and so much like care. It wasn't this glamorous, thousands of flowers, thousands of balloons type of thing. But I can tell you every table that was decorated by family and friends was done so with love.
Yeah.
And they felt like that was part of their gift to us, was doing that. And to us, that was the greatest gift they could give us, because there's no thing that we needed more than their support that day.
Yeah. Well, and it was, I don't know that everyone is as lucky as we were in that capacity, that like we had people, not only would they show up if we asked them to do something, but they would coordinate other people to come and help if they needed help without even telling us that they were doing that, right? Yeah. They just took, like, when there was something that we had asked to get done, like, they didn't come back and say, well, we're going to need some more people. It was just like, oh.
But if you think about it, like, and this is kind of interesting to talk through, because if you think about weddings that we go to, we do that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like emceeing a wedding. Like, I didn't think I was going to do that. Or you help do the speaker setup at that one wedding. And so I think instead of trying to control all of the things with professionals and hired people, it is really great to use the people that are there who want to help you and are willing to if you just ask. And it's amazing how those moments where people asked us at their weddings, like I'm thinking about so many different weddings now that we've helped with different things. Even things like, can you make sure my Aunt Sue doesn't feel left out? You know, and we asked friends and family to intermix and do that type of thing too. So set up, take down, intermingling. You have your community for a reason. You don't necessarily need to hire it all out.
And a lot of them are going to be not just will say yes if you ask, but
oh my gosh,
a lot of them will be really happy to be part of it. Just like for me, that memory of going out and collecting the sprigs is like really still something I cherish. I think others have like that cherished memory of being part of pulling it all together as well. If they're people that love you and you love them, and like they can feel like that this is part of their connection to that whole story.
Yeah. So I think that would be the big thing.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. And I think another aspect of this, because that's the beautiful side of family and friends, right? And in weddings, that's where those come together. Another aspect is there can be some different and difficult family dynamics in some occasions. And actually, you have a case of that as well. So how did you coordinate around this subject? Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Do you want to kind of start?
Sure. So my family is big, and I'm not incredibly close to a ton of them, but like I knew that I wanted them to participate in part of it and whatnot. And so I think on my side, there was a certain like dossier of like, okay, these are the sensibilities of these types of people, or these people. Let's make sure that we're not outright offending anybody. And I remember we went through our guest list a little bit just to make sure that there weren't people that we thought were going to like get into a fight with one another. And if there were, to like give some heads up to somebody to make sure that didn't happen.
Yeah.
I don't think it wasn't like some stories you hear where that's like just a volcano ready to explode. But I think we definitely did look through that. And then I don't want to take your story from you, but I do have some memories about your story, but I'll let you.
You go first.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll lead into it. So Liz's family is a lot more difficult. There are folks in that family that we weren't really sure if they were going to come. We weren't we got yeses, but we also got non-responses from them at the same time. It was just like a lot of uncertainty around like, are they even going to be there? And when you're putting a table together, that's really where the questions come out. Like, are these people going to show up, right? You set an RSVP date, but people don't always RSVP by that date. For a lot of people, you say, oh, well, they didn't RSVP, they're not coming. But when it's someone that you grew up with and it's someone super, super close to you, you really want to say, like, no, like, are you coming? You haven't said yes or no yet.
Well, and also, Topher grew up here. I didn't grow up here.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of my family also is coming from all over the country, like completely across the US. There's nobody super close. So I think the other component of it was, with the best of intentions, I think everyone wanted to be there, that we invited, but they felt bad saying no, and so it kind of got dragged out, and it was sort of a thing. And I think it was you that finally said, well, it doesn't hurt to just put a table up and throw some chairs down, and it's going to be fine, and we're just going to do it. The other part of my family dynamic that's a little bit more unique is I am super close with my uncle, and that's who I wanted to have walk me down the aisle. And that is like, he's my person. He's one of my like favorite people in the entire world. I grew up with him as like that incredibly amazing male role model in my life. And that's not normal for a lot of people. And that was the choice I made. And then surrounding that, you know, the guest list sort of evolved, and there were people we left out strategically because if they're not going to bring joy to us on that day, then we just made the decision, and it's been more so specifically for my side because there's a little bit more interesting dynamics.
Yeah.
We made the choice to just make the guest list what we thought was best to create an experience that fit our needs. And there were people that didn't agree, and there were vocalized opinions of that. But once everyone was there, and once everyone saw what we were trying to create and what we were working to avoid, I think there was compassion to that and empathy and understanding that, you know what, this isn't my day. This is their day.
Yeah.
And I definitely, for me, I made a lot of choices that were like, I am not making this choice out of obligation. I'm going to make the choice that I think is right for us.
Yeah, I think you were very discerning about that. Like,
yeah.
And I think that's the key is other people, especially people that let's call for what it is. Family can be hard sometimes. Friends rarely are hard because they're your friend, right? You chose them.
Yeah.
But family can be hard sometimes. Yeah. And I think we had to continually just check in to make sure we were remembering that this is principally about us, right? It's not about the other people that do or don't show up. And that can be really hard sometime, right? Because there are people you definitely want to be there, but at the end of the day, we control us and what we do, and like, and that's all we can do. And so I think we had to continually just make sure that we were on that page and do everything we could to keep focused on us and not the other people that should be doing something that they're not, or they're doing something that they shouldn't be, with revolving around like the lead up to the wedding. We just had to keep it focused on us as much as possible.
And let go a little bit of the family expectation.
Yeah.
And I think the part that I'm really glad we did was the ceremony. You know, you said it best, like, you don't choose your family, but you choose your friends. Like, we made sure that those chosen friends were able to come. And some people would think that there are people that would feel offended if they didn't go to the ceremony or if they weren't invited to the ceremony. But surprisingly, the feedback that we got from a lot of people was, we just want to go to the party anyway. We don't get, like, you get married, but we just want to come and party and eat and dance. This is great. This is the best, you know, situation we could be a part of. It doesn't take our whole day. We can come at night.
That was a good rubric for us too. Like, if you're coming from out of town, you're probably going to be invited to the ceremony.
Yeah, we invited everyone from out of town to the ceremony. Anyone who traveled in was part of the ceremony. And then anyone local who was just, you know, a friend or an extended friend or whatever, it was all are welcome at our big party.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, family's hard. Family is really hard. And I think the other part of it is it's your day, and it's also one day. And if a grown adult is going to have that much emotion over one day, that's more of a reflection of them than you making sure it's your day. So
how did you work around that? Like, when did you make the decision that this is my decision and I won't be inflicted by what others expect or think? Like, how did you come to that conclusion? Because I think that's the part that is hard for people, because
so hard.
You know, go ahead. Yeah, well,
I'll just say it was a process. It wasn't like okay, this is what we're doing. It was, and there were tears, there were feelings. Like, we had that time together, you know, in private where we would talk about it. And I really think it helped build our relationship, that support system back and forth. Like, to know that he supported the decisions I really wanted to make and vice versa, that made it a heck of a lot easier to actually execute on the decision. And I think evolved, and it was just by the time you were like, I support you making this about us. And that was that. Once we decided that it was just going to be about us, and that was the focal point, like that, if you want to call it a theme, that was our theme. It made it really easy to make decisions after that. Yeah. Would you agree?
I think so. And I think early on being bold about our expectations, I think I think that helped us a lot, right? Because people will, if there's uncertainty, people will start to form their own expectations. So for the people that are going to be close to the planning of the wedding, which I think my family was pretty close to the planning of the wedding in certain aspects, being early on, like setting ground rules and expectations about how that planning is going to look, for example, I think helped us so that we had already established, all right, like this is what we set from the get-go as far as an expectation. We're going to align with that the whole way through. So things like, like who's deciding what the decor looks like and that kind of thing.
Well, and it also is a dynamic between a couple because, his mom loves party planning. And I was not super, super close with your mother at the start of all this. I mean, I knew her well, obviously. But she is an Italian from New York. And I am my family has got a Finnish background from Minnesota, where you just are very polite and you do what everybody, you just say, oh, okay, that sounds nice. So to have this very like bold energy of this is my idea, it didn't feel to me like suggestions. Those felt like directives.
Right.
And I ended up having to sit down with him, and I'm like, I can't, like, I don't want to do what she's saying. I feel really bad telling her no. There were so many feelings because that's not where I'm from, that you wouldn't say no. You would be very polite and just, oh, okay, yeah, that's nice. And it's not what I wanted. So I would have that conversation with him. And it was over time, I learned a lot about how his family works. And it's still hard because it's definitely not my culture. It's not where I'm, you can probably relate to me a little bit more on this. It is something I still am learning and navigating with this family, but it was helpful to have my partner to say, no, Ma, no. Yeah, right. Like,
even though they were the ones mostly coordinating on some of the details about design and details, like, I think having, like, for me to be able to just step in and say, we're saying no to this, not because we don't love you, just because we have a different idea, right? And like the ability, I think just setting the groundwork with anybody that's going to be pretty involved in helping you, to be able to say no to them and make sure that there's someone you're comfortable saying no to is super important.
Well, and if you can't say no, then making sure your partner can say
exactly.
No. Because I will say, even when you went and said no, there was a part of me that's like, oh, she's for sure mad. And you're like, no, that's not how it works. But it, like, where I come from, it's a very like understated sort of passive aggressive, I guess, oh, okay, you don't want to do that. Okay. And, but with this, I had to learn more about his family and how they operate. And it was okay. She was okay that I said no. And I had to learn through that a little bit. And it felt good to feel supported and know when we needed to say no.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So your decision of making this about you, did that help in like all of the crossroads down the line?
Yeah, absolutely. If as long as that stays top of mind, then all of the other challenges that come with, like, okay, my family, your family, all of that stuff, it gives you that basis to return back to on, okay, what's going to be good for us? Because that's what it's all about in the end.
Yeah.
And like, this is the time, if there's any time that you can just unabashedly say, this is about us, right? That there's a lot of, obviously that's not a thing that people want to say in everyday life. Generally, you want to be kind and, mutually supporting one another and whatnot. And like, it's not about me. It's never about me. I'm, but this time it is. So
yeah. I think that is the center point. And then all the decisions surrounding it, supporting your partner in that, and making sure that you're not alone, like making sure that you and your partner go and say no together. Like, this is a choice we made together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We discovered what us was in some cases through this, right? Like, there were things that we had never even considered together on how we might respectively understand things, and we had to figure that out. Like, it was our first real budgeting experience, for one, I think. And there's that piece of it. There's how we planned the guest list. None of these things were, I don't think I went in knowing how Liz was going to take some of these things, or like what her perspective on it would be. And we kind of learned how we as a couple would operate under these conditions and with these questions as we went.
And I think it also set the foundation for our marriage through these processes, to take the time and allow that time and set those boundaries. I mean, we set the boundaries before we said I do. And so now, both sides of our family know that when we set a boundary, we're probably not messing around, and it makes our lives a lot easier and a lot more peaceful, because we're just a cohesive front together. So it was a good foundation.
That's a really good takeaway from learning through this process.
Yeah.
And back to the guest list a little bit, because there's in the guest list that's also a place where family dynamics can be kind of difficult. And it was especially one person that you were not sure would turn up at the ceremony or not. Yeah. And I think you actually postponed the ceremony a little bit just to see. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So one of my family members, my aunt, she is someone I just cherish with my whole heart. She's really special. She does not like big events. She does not like big get-togethers. She does her own thing, and it works for her. And that is something that, I've supported, and it's just her, that's her thing. She doesn't mean to be, but she is late to everything. Like, absolutely she's just one of those people that's always late. She means well. She means to get out of the house in time. She's just always late. And there were a lot of challenges to get them down to Arizona and get them here. They had, some surprises that came up along the way. And she also was driving my grandmother down to the ceremony too. And so the time came for everything to start, and they weren't there yet. And that's not great, because we flew my grandma in from Florida to come and be a part of this too. So it was a decision that we made to just like sit tight for a little bit. We knew they were on their way, luckily at that point, that everything had worked out to get them there. And we didn't want to see each other before the ceremony. We didn't do like a first look. We didn't do any of that. We did very kind of just old school. Like, we're gonna see each other when I'll see you up there. Like, that's what we're going to do. So in that delay, as much as it was an emotional experience, a very emotional experience, because I was so worried. I felt bad for all the guests waiting. Hair and makeup's done, and these girls are standing in the sun, and the guys are in these suits standing in the Arizona sun in these suits, and everybody's, waiting. And I was worried they would think something was wrong. My uncle, who I've already expressed is a very important person in my life, he was the one that walked me down the aisle. He and I actually got a very special sort of chunk of time before I had to walk down the aisle. And what was so special about that is, because you were privy to all of it, you caught some of those moments that I don't know if another photographer would have caught that. So I got to sit with him, and the photos aren't glamorous. Clearly, we're just kind of sitting there like a girl in a wedding dress and this dude that's about to walk her down the aisle in a suit. But that time spending just with him before marrying you was like incredibly special. And I'm very grateful she came, and I'm glad my grandma got there safe and we got her in, and they all got to be a part of it. It was emotional, but it also created that space for those special moments. And for you to understand that too, because some wedding planners, organizers, event coordinators, they want to keep you on time. You got to do this. The sun's going to go down. You need to get that special shot. You just leaned into the experience, and you embraced the fact that like, okay, we knew this could be a thing, and we're just going to let this sort of happen. And it happened, and it all worked out. And then, of course, there was like joy after that you also were able to hone into, that I don't know, had there not been the understanding of some of that ahead of time, I don't know if you would have been able to hone into some of that joy. So does that answer that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that makes photographing weddings interesting to me is to not focus on the wedding. Because by doing that, every wedding is unique. I get to capture every client's unique in their own experience. And this was your experience. And it was I must admit, very difficult to understand beforehand. We talked a little bit about it, like on our video calls. But that whole family dynamic is what made me and Ray, my good friend Ray Prop, really bond. We had met previously on one or two conferences, and we kept in touch online. And when you guys booked me to photograph your wedding, I thought this is a great opportunity to bring Ray in on the team, and let's photograph this wedding together. So one thing that we did both the day before and the morning of the wedding was to play detectives. We wanted to properly figure out this, like, how can we photograph this story in the best possible way? To do that, we have to understand it. So we were kind of asking questions and interviewing some of your family members and friends to try to pick up some pieces and knowing how to coordinate around this. So that's one of the reasons why Ray stayed with you while you were waiting for your aunt to come, and I stayed with Topher and the other guests at the ceremony space, right? And by being aware of that, we could let you be yourselves and actually just have that experience. And when it's being photographed, that's what you remember from that experience.
Yeah. It really, really helps too, because it's a buffer. Like, the photographers are the buffer, and if you're attuned to some of that dynamic, you can sort of guide the narration a little bit of some of those things as they're happening. It's not wedding related at all. It's feeling, it's emotional, it's relationships. And, that specific individual, my aunt, she hates photos. She doesn't want photos of herself. She loves taking photos. She loves photography, but she doesn't want to be in photos. And I think I also made sure you guys knew that, and knew that, like, it was special to me that there were at least a few photos with her, because she's a special person. So it was really nice to just have that out in the open. And look, it's not pretty, it's not clean. Family's not always pretty and perfect and clean. But it's special. It's exactly what it's meant to be. So it was good to know that you helped capture those things.
Yeah, I'm glad you feel that way. And you can say it's not wedding related, but I actually think it is wedding related. That is what weddings is about. The family and friends you gather at the same place and same time. And you actually said it earlier. They would probably never be gathered at the same place and time ever again, unless, maybe some of you die, right?
Yeah, which nobody wants to get together for that.
that would be a very different experience.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that to me, to gather all those friends and family that are special to you and all the relations you have between all of these different people is what makes every wedding unique and special. And by focusing on capturing the unique stories, I think you are more satisfied with the end result because you can feel and look like yourselves and you recognize your family and friends in the photos, as opposed to having me shoot this cookie cutter style. Oh, it's the bride in the morning. I have to photograph her putting on makeup, right? Oh, I have to photograph Topher tying his bow tie. We actually have photos of that. But we also have photos of you playing video games, chilling on the sofa, hanging out in the morning, and not being like so wedding-y, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Mm. And we have silly get ready girl photos too, like really silly ones because we were just being goofy. But yeah, it was special. And we love it. We love it.
Awesome. Yeah. Is there anything from your wedding day that you regret not doing? Is there something that, oh, we forgot this, or we should have done something differently?
I'll say the only thing that I regret is that I think I would have gone to like 2 a.m. But we were I don't even remember what we were doing all night, mostly dancing, and then people just started to go away. And
we're like, wait, don't go away. Don't go away, stay right here.
Yeah. I think to have that time, but also it was good to just be able to go and have time together too. So maybe not even that, but I think I could have had for another couple hours at the reception.
Yeah. Well, and we technically had the space as late as we wanted, if I'm remembering right. Yeah, that's like an uncontrollable. I'm trying to think about any of the planning and the organizing. I don't, I think we also gave into the experience. So at a certain point in the process, you as bride, especially, because a lot of the stuff falls on the bride, it's a lot of the pretty things, you have to choose to either control the situation or let the situation be what it's going to be. And I think by making the choice to just embrace whatever was going to happen and just embrace it, I think it made it so that there were no regrets. Yeah, there really, I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, even the night before the wedding, my maid of honor and I just spent time together. It was very, intimate at the end after we had done the rehearsal dinner and everything else. And that was really special too. And yeah, I don't think there's anything that I really can say I regret from it or regret not doing or anything like that.
No, if we were planning a wedding again, I don't think there's anything that I would say now I would have planned to do differently than what we planned to do.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Just, that's kind of a boring answer, but
yeah. I'm trying to rack my brain. I'm trying to rack my brain if there's anything else, but
if we flip the question, is there anything now, almost 4 years after, that you find or found unnecessary? Like something that, we didn't have to spend that much time or money on whatever thing.
It's hard to say. It's such a positive experience for me that it's hard for me to say things that could have been better.
Yeah.
It sounds like you guys just had the perfect wedding.
I guess so. What do you think?
Okay, so the only part, and I think it's important we talk about this because this was a controversial decision that we made. And I don't even know if you know this, Eirik. So for the ceremony, we chose no children. We said no children are allowed. Arizona, for those who aren't familiar with Arizona, the plants try to kill you. All of the plants have spikes. And the botanical gardens, there's no fences around all these plants. They're very open, and it's if you are not meticulously watching children, the children will be very bloody very quickly. And especially if you're flying children in from other cities and states and everything
that haven't grown up knowing.
Yes, that don't know what this is.
Our son had an experience with a cactus at like 9 months, so he knows now not to.
No cactus. So that was something that some people really, really did not like, because we said no children at the ceremony. What we did was we actually hired babysitters at the reception space. We created a space for the kids to hang out, hired the babysitters to watch the kids. So during the ceremony, if you wanted to drop your kids off with these trusted, and we sent out the information ahead of time, these trusted babysitters, let us know, we'll pay for it. They're there. And then the kids were more than welcome to be a part of the reception and dance and have fun and all of that. Now being a parent, I think I'm a bit more empathetic to the no of the ceremony and saying no. I think I would have still made the same decision.
I was going to say, I would still,
I would still make the same decision. Safety and just, it's a ceremony. It's kind of more of an adult sort of thing, depending on your opinion. And I think the only difference I would have made would be, I think I would have had more meaningful personal conversations with those parents. Versus just, I think we sent it out in the information.
Yeah, it was just in the invite, just like, don't bring your kids.
Yeah, like no, we said like, please note that children are not invited to the ceremony, but they are invited to the reception. I think I would have probably had more meaningful, talk to each person individually. It made that connection, made that time, and helped explain that story a little bit more. I think that would have been my only shift. But that, I mean, now being a parent, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
I think one thing that I think I spent a lot of time thinking about leading up that ended up not being too relevant was like all the various activities that would be at the reception space. The reception space had some stuff already, but I think like I thought a lot about like, okay, we're going to want spaces for people to talk and hang out, and we're going to want like games for people to play and whatnot. I was imagining like, oh yeah, at some point in the night, I'm going to enjoy some of these things or do some of these things. There's no way. Like that's the last thing on my mind on the night of the reception was to go and like play video games or sit by the fire for a couple minutes. It was like we were just so caught up in the moment that none of that stuff really came up. So I think not like spending the effort thinking about what other people like were going to do, that's not something that we necessarily needed to like care that much about, right? And that's why you have other people helping you as well, making sure the experience overall is good. But I think I got a little too bound up in that question of like, okay, like, are my friends going to have fun, and make sure that there's stuff for them to do? Like someone else can think about that stuff.
Well, and I think once they got there, they just visited with each other, exactly. And like sitting at the tables together, and the little animal teams, like they loved it. And so I think letting go, making sure you do that. That's probably like a big thing. And I think it's interesting to think. I love that we're doing this, Eirik, because I think it's really important for you to hear a lot of this too, because you probably didn't know a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, a lot of this is very interesting for me to hear,
Yeah.
And also I think in general, when people are planning their wedding, usually they've never planned a wedding before, right? So it's so easy to fall into what is a wedding. Yeah. And that's the premise of this whole podcast, to talk about people who have been married and planned a wedding before. And also I have some wedding professionals like a DJ and a officiant and florist and other people I'm going to make episodes with as well. And I just want to bring a different perspective into the whole wedding thing, because I really think that you guys made space for such a beautiful wedding to happen. Just because you focused on you and your family and friends and what you wanted your wedding to be. And that is something that I think, so the egotistical version of this is that I think it's more fun to photograph. But the other aspects of that is the guests have more fun. you feel it's more personalized to you, and you feel more like, oh, this is so us, and just it doesn't have to be about the wedding. It's like the gathering of people and having fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, and even our dessert choice, some people had bold opinions on we chose mini donuts.
That was one thing that my mom's like, wait, you're not going to have cake?
Oh yeah, people were very emotional about it.
She's like, can we get a little cake for you to cut?
Yeah. And she even does it now with Kilo's birthday parties. And we're like, what part of no cake have you not heard so far?
Pretty sure my family thinks my wife is on a cake vendetta.
Yeah.
Just eradicate all cake.
Like, no. But if you think about like the cake and I don't know, we wanted like something grab and go, get back into the fun, get, you know, you don't have to sit down and have this formal like cake. So it was, it ended up being really, really delicious and yummy. And it wasn't like a big chunk of cake. It was just a mini donut. You could grab a few if you wanted to. But I remember people were like, what are you going to do on your first anniversary? I'm like, I'm not going to eat gross old cake. Like, what do you like? We're going to go for donuts? Like, for real, it's going to be okay. I just, so looking back, some of the bold choices in staying with that, what I will lovingly call our theme of just us, they weren't received very well. They were challenged. But now they're so silly when you talk. I mean, talking to you about it, talking about this cake drama.
Yeah.
It's funny.
But there was never any, like, that's the other thing, because we set that expectation that we were going to make our decisions and that was just going to be it. Like,
yeah.
I don't feel like it didn't come to the level of drama. It was just,
no, it was more like,
no, we're not going to do that. Let's move on, you know?
Yeah. But it was like that, like, but that's what you do.
Yeah, exactly. There was
what you do.
Subverted expectations for sure.
And no, we did not have cake.
No cake.
I think hearing about you talking about these kind of things gives people permission to be themselves and to do things in a different way.
Yeah. Well, and also once the guests got to experience the entire evening, the way we envisioned it, which was not traditional, I think they understood after the fact. So those that were in question before, it was like, what? That's weird. Oh, that's interesting. That's funny. But then once it was all said and done, they're like, okay, now we get it. We didn't understand before, but we get it now.
Well, and even for the ones that didn't or don't, we have a personal connection to all those things.
Yeah.
Now. And like, that's, I think the most important part is,
yeah.
Every decision we made was one that we made because we had a personal connection to it.
And the piñatas are still in our garage, by the way. The piñatas, because we didn't do like a card box.
No, we did a card box. It was just in the shape of a llama.
It was a giant piñata. And we did, so they still live with us.
That's so fantastic. And it just also came to mind your DJ, Zach.
Yeah.
Right? Was that someone you knew beforehand, or did you find him?
Yeah, we just found him through the course of it. That was a fairly utilitarian decision for us. Like, we knew we wanted music. But I don't think we didn't spend all of that much mental energy like finding the perfect DJ for us. It just wasn't like, we love music. But I also knew that I have friends that can put together a mean Spotify playlist if it comes to it, right?
Yeah.
So I think, we wanted to get a DJ that could just do some MC and put together a playlist so we didn't have to worry about it. But it was just one of those things that didn't rise to the level of like a must fret over for me, and I don't think for you either.
No, because I think the other side of it, I don't think either of us mind grabbing the mic and saying, okay, well, we're gonna let the DJ sit down, we're gonna do this now, like, which like a lot of people don't want to do that, like they get shy. But he did a wonderful job of narrating the reception and making sure we hit all the important points.
Yeah.
We did sit down with him and gave him kind of an agenda of what we were looking for. He gave us his professional feedback on that, and we were able to formulate something that worked. And he also was really respectful of the do not playlist.
Yeah, the do not playlist. He got some of the stuff that we really vibe with, and yeah, I think it all worked out really well.
Yeah, I think also he did a fantastic job just by reading the room, you know, and knowing when do we need more energy, when do we need to tone things down. And I also specifically remember there was some punk music in there that it created a mosh pit with some two-step dancing on the dance floor. I mean, that must have been influenced by you, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a request from my best man, I think, to get that song on. Yeah.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Charlie.
Charlie. I think we had talked about that beforehand because I had been at his wedding and we talked about making sure that we had some funk music in mind so that we could do some skanking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
So that was a good way to put it is what you said, a do not list and give to your DJ.
Do not playlist.
Yeah.
A do not playlist.
Do not playlist.
Everyone's got songs they just don't like.
Yeah. That's a great tip, a do not playlist.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of traditional wedding reception songs that just don't fit what we would turn on if we were listening to music. And so, you know, we made sure that there was a list of that so that everything that was played was very positive.
Yeah. But I think that kind of encompasses our broader philosophy on life is we gave mostly a list of things that we just didn't want to hear and then left free reign for whatever else was going to happen, right? So like set some boundaries and then enjoy the moment as it comes.
Yeah. Well, and that way if a guest requested it, he could say, sorry, that's on the do not playlist. Just take care of it.
Nice. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to add to this conversation?
Ooh. Can you think of anything?
I mean, I feel like I've interjected most of the things that I'm most passionate about through the conversation. It was such a positive experience.
Yeah. I think one of the parts of the entire weekend that I really enjoyed was the fact that most of it was pretty casual. You know, you came in Thursday night, we were playing games, hanging out, boys were having beer, whatever. And then the next day it was going out and getting the greenery, the yoga class, and the rehearsal. The rehearsal dinner was very special because your family, Italian family, so they had to cook. And it was really special because they actually made a meal that was very special to your family, like your uncle's.
He made chicken pot.
Yeah, he made he made some special stuff.
Yeah.
And to allow that space for people to come from out of town to come be with the family and just welcome them in from their journey was really, really great. And I liked that it was much more casual because I know some rehearsal dinners, you can go more the formal route, but having it be, you know, buffet style casual, it created more opportunity, like you said, for our guests to really connect.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I have been at weddings where you feel sort of compelled to sit at your table for most of the night or most of the time you're there. That's like, I didn't even recognize it when we were planning our wedding, but we definitely, I think people were at their table for maybe 30 minutes and that was it, right? And the rest of the time...
Unless they were like really into their animal team. Right, they stay together.
I think like that's like super, thinking through it now, that's like super important to me that people will have a chance to go and just mingle, meet new people, self-direct the kind of experience they want to have and create that unexpected, all the unexpected stuff that can happen that way, I think is really good. And I think having those more informal, whether it's the reception or the rehearsal dinner, just creating space for people to do their own thing, I think is really good.
Yeah. And I do like that the reception that we chose, because it was unique and because it was kind of quirky, off the beaten path, it had little pockets where if people wanted to kind of venture and have a quiet space or play a game or play on the claw machine or sit by the fire, like there were all these sort of like little spaces. And And we left them as they were. We didn't turn each space into a wedding space. And I really liked that we did that because I felt like those spaces felt more accessible to our guests to go have a moment to experience the evening the way they wanted to.
And it left time for us. And I think this is what is really important to me looking back, was all of the time that we created for quiet time and just a chance to be out of the action for a little while.
Be together.
To be together. Exactly. Like that was, looking back on it, that was the most important part of all of it, was to have all of these things going on and to be able to go and participate in those and have all these people around you that you love, but then to be able to step away for a little while and connect with one another. And I think creating a weekend that has that blend was, I think, really, really important to the overall experience.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a lot. I feel like we give you such long answers.
I don't even know what the question was. No, I'm just kidding. That's really beautiful. And it really shows, I think, like from my perspective, being there, documenting this and the photos after, it really shows the connection between you, the connection between the guests, and like everyone had such a great time. And I think that your planning up front, deciding what this is supposed to be, made it so.
Yeah. Thanks. We worked hard on that.
Yeah. Well, I think planning for wiggle room is important, right? Because it allows you to adjust. If your schedule is super rigid to the point that like you've got to hit every single event, you're not going to be able to seize those moments that you really want to dwell more on and spend more time with. And I think we had that in our wedding, the ability to say, hey, we really want to spend more time doing this thing right now. And that was, I think that served us really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
Look, if a florist listens to this feedback, they're going to be like, no, the flowers are so important. Or if like a wedding planner listens, they're going to be like, you have no idea, like the types of things I do. But really, when you're talking about like budgets and where you're going to put those funds, you know, and we also are much more of a planning type couple, and we had support, so I could see where people.
And you've got good design sense to start with, so like bringing people together that can make it look a certain way, like is not as necessary for you because you just like kind of know what it could look like already.
But then, if you think about those people that don't have that, if they don't have that design sense, my guess is their house is probably pretty normal, and that is a happy space for them. Why they should know they don't have to spend the money to make it look like a magazine, you know, because if that's not their passion.
And it might be some people, like I know some people look back and they say, oh, it was so beautiful. And they remember the little bits and whatnot and how it was done up. And I think it all just comes back to like, you got to know what you think is important and what's going to be important to you that day. You should, by the time you're getting married, hopefully you know yourself well enough to know like what's important to you versus what's important to other people.
But yeah, we've used the photos in like different ways, like when we're sending notes to friends or birthdays or different things like that. Like that's definitely how we've used some of them. But your artistic vision on a wedding still to this day is what we gravitated to. Because some of this wedding stuff, Eirik, is just, it's painful to look at. It's painful. And I have these friends that come out and they like post their photos from their wedding. And I'm like, was it a staged photo shoot for like cheap men's suits? Or what was this? Like, what was this? This is terrible. I'm such a jerk. I'm such a jerk. Don't repeat that.
But I see what you mean. I totally see what you mean. And you also said that you hope no florists or wedding planners or anyone in that industry is listening to this conversation. But I really think that is such a good point, because I think, especially in America, it's crazy in America compared to here in Norway, but I think so many couples are planning their wedding. They feel they have to go with all these wedding things and wedding stuff because that's what you're supposed to do. I've photographed weddings in Austin, Texas, where the flower arrangements cost, I think it was 3 times of what my photography service cost.
That would be like the entire cost of our wedding, basically, in flowers.
It's just stupid. It's so stupid. And I don't know. But look, if that person really loves flowers, but I just struggle because those things die. Like, they're going to die.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, in a way, a little wasteful too. I don't know, but that's us. That's where we stand on things. Some women glamorize the experience to a point where it's, in my mind, slightly frivolous. Like, it's just, the spending is crazy.
Yeah, I think there is a question of like focus, right? What you're focused on in your wedding.
But is that, I mean, not to take it to a philosophical level, but does that then zoom out to what you're focused on in your life?
Well, I think that's,
and if your wedding is the foundation of your life with another person and you're only focused on the material things, or that's the main focus, is that how you want to start? That's not
what we chose. Yeah, not what we chose.
That would be my challenge.
Yeah.
And I have challenged girlfriends with that. I have challenged girlfriends with that as they're going through this process.
It's like you got to love the person enough that you would marry them in an elopement where no one else was there. If you don't love them that much, then don't marry that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was that received when you presented that way, Liz?
Depending on the individual, it's a little bit of a shock. It's like a, whoa, hold on. And then the conversation typically evolves into, you want to buy a house, you want to start a family. If someone is giving you $30,000 extra for you to use towards your wedding budget, are you really going to blow it all just on flowers and all of that? Or could you take that and
start your life?
Yeah, start your life with your person. Like, truly start your life. Like, celebrate the moment and have that experience and have those special feelings and people and all of that. But then, like, have your life start. And, or even, I mean, like our honeymoon too. You probably saw our honeymoon on Instagram. Like, we did Vietnam, we did all of these experiences, and I think everyone's a little bit different, but I do like that you're shedding light on, maybe we've gone too far in America, at least, maybe we've gone too far one way and we can kind of zoom back. But then for any person in Norway that would listen to this, maybe we're still over here in the past in what we expect it to be, and we haven't come to a middle ground. I think I do believe that this conversation can appeal to both sides.
For sure.
Yeah, really cool.
I think that,
gotta spend the money on the things that you care about, right? But be discerning about things you don't care about.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good way to put it, but I think that's a difficult, how can I put this? Like, when you are in the planning process, how do you even know that is a question? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to my statement of, if the word wedding did not even enter your brain and this event was just about you and your partner, what would you do? And I think like that takes your brain a totally different place. And I mean, if we were to throw a party right now just to celebrate the two of us, like, oh my gosh, I'd probably do it exactly this, like, very similar. Pretty similar,
yeah.
There might be like some more kid-friendly stuff now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But
it's a little bit
a little bit different. But like, yeah, I think, and I think about like holidays and how we plan and organize holidays and stuff. And I think like what's so funny, so Eirik, we're working on figuring out what we want our family traditions to be around Christmas.
Okay.
And you have to set boundaries, like, okay, we're only going to go to the big family get together Christmas Eve, and then Christmas Day, we're going to do our small intimate. But it's funny because some of the same types of things that we did at our wedding, like I want to go outside, I want to be outside and have an adventure or whatever. Some of those same things are things that we're demanding to put into those special moments every year. So I do think that this is like a really important question for couples to ask, because I think it'll shape all those special moments,
Thank you guys for joining me on this podcast. I hope that the listeners will find this conversation interesting and inspiring. And I also hope that listening to you guys will give people permission to be more or bring more of themselves into their wedding weekends.
If that even inspires one person, I feel like that's amazing. And I love that we got to share our story. Yeah.
A lot of fun. Thanks, Eirik.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you,
Always
guys.
A pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Likte du det du nettopp hørte, eller lærte du kanskje noe nytt? Da hadde jeg satt veldig stor pris på om du har lyst til å fortelle om denne podcasten til noen du kjenner. Eller gå på Instagram og plukk en reel som du liker og del i storyen din, og oppfordre vennene dine og følgerne dine til å følge Bryllupspodcasten. Hvis du har noen spørsmål eller noe på hjertet, så send en melding til Bryllupspodcasten på Instagram, så skal jeg svare deg så godt jeg kan.